Everything on YouTube changed when the recommender algorithm was introduced.
It's not just algorithmic, it's very deliberate.
I'm a weapon. I'm made to be thrown at you.
I think YouTube is a very intimate format. You're watching one person talk to you.
When they start telling you about their beliefs and views, that pack a real punch.
Now we're in this sort of misinformation apocalypse.
A new documentary looks at the rise of YouTube to become one of the most powerful media platforms in the world. And while it has made our lives easier in many ways, some would say it has also made the world a more dangerous place.
Alex Winter is the director of the YouTube Effect and joins us now. Alex, thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's so interesting because this started as just a innocent, I'm going to post my video, you post yours, and then you forget that how quickly did this evolve into something where you're like, oh, everyone can post whatever they want?
I mean, it happened right away, but it was a slow build. And I think that the reason we wanted to look at the platform and the company, which is really Google, because YouTube is owned by Google, is its scale. It's so vast. It's 4.6 billion views a day. It's far and away bigger than any other platform. And it's much more than what people think of it as, you know, funny videos or a social media platform or news or all of the world's recorded history. It's really all of those things, and it has an enormous influence. A lot of that influence is actually really positive. It's not by any means all the negative. But because it's so big, when things that are bad happen, they happen in a very big way.
Yeah, and maybe you can give some examples of that. It seems like the social media companies, though, just kind of throw up their hands and say, well, don't blame us. We're just a tool. It's freedom of speech. Is that fair and accurate, though?
No, it's not accurate at all in most of the cases, and certainly not in YouTube's case. You're looking at because of the business model, you're looking at a company that is getting ad revenue based on this content, and they have algorithms that intentionally drive more viewers to that content, because that's where they make more ad money. So it's a profit motive. I wouldn't label them as being nefarious in terms of why they're pushing this content, other than to make more money. But no, you can't really use a First Amendment argument here, because it's really a private company. It's got nothing to do with the government, which is what the First Amendment and free speech laws are about. It's really about a private company that is highly monetizing content, some of which is very dangerous.
Yeah, talk about this algorithm and how that came about, and when that shift happened. They decided, because usually you just pop up and see whatever you search. How did this algorithm idea come to be?
Well, an algorithm, just to demystify it, is they just really refer to the mechanisms that drive any of these tech platforms. So they're not as mysterious as they get made out. The recommender algorithm, which we talk about in the doc, to be fair to YouTube, was a big problem when it was launched, and they did a lot of work on that algorithm. And it's much harder to be what we used to call rabbit hole today, where you go on YouTube looking for, I don't know, pajamas, and you end up, down some crazy neo-Nazi website or something. That doesn't really happen so much anymore. But the point we're making in the film is these are really not issues of algorithm. They're really issues of business model. Because when you have the power of the visual medium, right, where a content creator is looking in their webcam and talking directly to the end user, that's very powerful. When you multiply that by 4.6 billion views a day, the power of that is enormous and doesn't require some kind of mysterious algorithm to suck you in. So it's really a business model issue. It's when you're profiting off of dangerous content, that's when you have a problem, and that content is now proliferate.
But Alex, aren't lies and hateful speech protected by the First Amendment? Are you suggesting government needs to regulate this the way they might regulate other utilities?
I mean, this is a much longer conversation, but the somewhat, in my opinion, non-controversial answer is no, they are not, because it's a misunderstanding of the First Amendment. This is not any dissimilar to television when broadcast rose up in the 50s and 60s, and we ended up implementing very basic standards and practice regulations, which kept TV from hurting people. We haven't done that in the case of big tech. Intentionally, they don't want their profit motive tinkered with by anybody, whether it's lawmakers, whether it's by themselves, because it doesn't require the government if these companies would police themselves, but they won't, because it'll impact their profit motive. So, it really isn't a freedom of speech issue. If, for instance, in the Christchurch shooting, not to get bleak, but in the New Zealand shooting, of 2019 when 51 Muslims were murdered by a shooter whose manifesto just liberally quoted being radicalized on YouTube by a very specific set of influencers that were being monetized, that were spreading beyond hate speech. They were spreading incitement to terrorist violence, and people began to commit terrorist violence. I think if you're running a company where that type of content has that kind of impact on society, it needs to have standards, basic standards and practices and other guardrails to prevent people from getting hurt. That's not happening.
And of course, there's the other side of the coin where people who probably didn't have access to a lot of information can get things now, and it's become a learning tool. There's all these great things about it at the same time.
Well, I would actually argue that the platforms are largely a net positive, just to be really clear. I think that YouTube has done an extraordinary job of helping people build careers, like monetizable careers on the internet, creating content. And I think that the platform performs an extremely important service to the world. I've got 3 boys. They're all on YouTube. I've never taken them off of YouTube. I think it's really more about looking at something that grew way bigger and way faster than anyone expected and saying, let's pause for a beat and let's make this thing work a little better so that people don't get hurt.
And is government willing to step in and do something? What have you found?
It's difficult because of several reasons. One is these technologies are very new, so they're very hard to understand. Secondly, there is a lot of lobbying power by big tech, more than almost any other industry. So they have locked up both sides of the aisle, which prevents a lot of these companies from being regulated or having antitrust laws thrown at them or anything else that would hurt their profit motive. So I think it's going to be a slow roll, but I don't by any means think it's impossible. And I also don't think Google is nefarious and wants their platform to cause harm. So I think that the louder the voices are of its audience, of its users who are giving them their profit, I think the greater motive they're going to have to take action, or the government to take better action.
All right. Well, it's streaming now, yteffect.com. It's called the YouTube Effect. Alex, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks.
We'll be right back.